While we'll continue to keep our eyes on what's playing out in Mokwa, Niger State, with the death toll, the humanitarian response, and ensuring that the people are able to get some semblance of their lives back, let's talk about the governance that affects the policies that you see, the governance that affects the response that you see, the governments that affect, or governance that affects security, economy, and the rest. And make no mistake about this, second-term governors, for example, are already shopping for their successors in that sense. Others are working towards 2027, either for re-election as governor, lawmakers at the state and the federal level, or for who will be the #1 man or woman in Nigeria. But I'd like you to take a listen to something that the president of Nigeria's Senate said over the weekend. Got a lot of people laughing, but then it just opened up yet another conversation that we need to have about the leadership recruitment process. So take a listen, and then we'll dive deeper into that whole process.
And this, for me, is something I must advise our governors, particularly those of them who are on their second terms. Do not give power to anybody who is not looking for power. Don't give power to anybody who is not prepared. Don't go hiding in your heart that this boy is very subservient. He's always kneeling down when he's talking to me. The wife is always rolling on the floor. I think I should make this one the governor. If you do that, you are giving power to somebody who is not prepared for governance, and they will disappoint you. That is where betrayals normally start. I'm just trying to advise. For the progressive governors, I believe that all of you are doing well because you are being led by a man who has both sight and vision. I was in Ogun State, Mr. President, to close the National Sports Festival. And I must salute the efforts of Dr. Biodun Sion, the governor of Ogun State. He represented this nation very well. Your Excellency, the governor of Ogun State, I'm very proud of what you are doing. May God continue to bless you. Along that corridor, going all the way Abeokuta and all, he has left Agbara where they used to have the industrial city. He's creating a new industrial city.
So yes, the Senate President speaking there, he made mention of Ogun State. By the way, yes, the Ogun State governor is going to be ending his second term. And of course, he'll be in that process of shopping, or at least influencing, selecting, call it whatever. But let's take a deep dive into what the process should be like and how to ensure that we get the very best from the top to the bottom, as they say. We have Kunle Lawal joining us on the program this morning. He's Executive Director of Electoral College Nigeria. Good morning, Mr. Lawal.
Good morning, Claudia. It's always a pleasure to be here.
First, let me get your general thoughts, because there's a lot in what the Senate President said. Said don't give power to those looking for power. To those who are not looking for power, those who are not prepared for it, don't give it to those who are subservient, who are kneeling down for you, those wives are rolling on the floor. Do not give power. Because it says if you do that, betrayal is common. So generally speaking, what do you make of this statement by the Senate President? Then we'll dive deeper.
So for me, the first problem is that the Senate President makes it clear, not an assumption, but the reality of what politics is in Nigeria, that the transference or the movement of power is from power to power, not from people to power. And in a democracy, it's supposed to be the people that actually make those choices, not the governors. So you could say maybe he's speaking from a party perspective, that who you're going to support in primaries, but he didn't put it that way. And he made it clear that it's a hand-on. For me, the first thing that came to my mind when I heard that conversation was the Fubara incident. And for me, I was like, oh, okay. And then his own situation when he decided to pass power on after he was a governor. And, you know, it gets you thinking, who actually holds the power? Is it these governors, or we, the people who are the electorates that have been, how would I put it, have mortgaged our situation and allowed them make these choices?
So I think we must give it to him for being honest. And that's why we brought you to intervene. He's clearly saying that citizens don't decide who becomes their leader. Especially, let's just use the state level. So the conversation I think we should be having, which we need you for, is how do we take back power from politicians? because they already, they make a lot of the decisions with war chest and all of this influence as to who gets the party's ticket in the primaries. And everybody just follows suit. It is what they produce within the primaries that all of us are left with to decide on. So how do we get back our power?
Now, this is it's always a funny situation. And, you know, most people say, so most of our agencies, most of our media always say, vote, go and vote, PVC. But that's not how a democracy runs. In Nigeria, we have what I would naturally say is a selection and not an election, because we're not part of the primaries process. So people are picked A, B, C, D, and then we have to pick from A, B, C, D. One of the key things that shocks me is how people within the workforce or within the civil service are not allowed to participate in partisan politics. That's party politics. And that is cutting off another about 30 million of party participation. Any great democracy has a lot of people in the country participating in its primaries. If you want to know a strong democracy, there are a lot of people participating in primaries. And Nigeria, we do not have up to 500, let me not say 500, we do not have up to 750,000 dues-paying members in a political party. And that is destructive for a country of 250 million.
We need to pitch a tent there, because that's an important point. So is that a failing on the part of the people? Because they say that if you fund the structure, that's when you have a say in the structure in that sense. And you hear in the PDP, for example, them say, well, it was former Governor Wike who was funding, so he wields a lot of power. So where were you people when he was funding? Now, all of a sudden, you want to claim the party. So is that something that the people should look at and say, okay, we take the blame for this one, we should do better?
If they don't take the blame, the country takes the blame. Well, but of course, yes, the electorate, like I said, mortgaged its responsibilities. And I don't think it's a naivety of the public. I think it's a total disregard for our civic or our understanding of civic rights in Nigeria. The average Nigerian, oh, anyhow, if you pay me, you pay me. That's how we are. And it's not worked. Politically, if you do not participate in that particular process, you cannot be a godfather. So the people can be godfathers, and the Constitution also can be godfathers, but we have not let that happen. We've created a culture of what happens, and that culture is defined as a way of life. We've created a culture of what happens, and we follow that process. So governors dictate, ex-governors dictate. That's why it's so easy for an ex-governor to go back to the Senate, which is an executive and a legislative function, and we actually do not even differentiate. And the truth is, I think the only ex-governor that has made a good legislator, I believe, is Senator Adams Oshimole. I don't think anybody else, because they're two different parts. I even feel the ex-governor of Edo State should actually have been a legislator from the beginning.
So it is a serious, how do I put this now? So I'm looking for the right words to be able to convey this as much as possible. So the whole idea is to make sure power returns to the people in that sense. What can legislation do? Are there legislations and then we don't have it? Because somebody like Nyesom Wike, for instance, would say, you can imagine a man coming out publicly to say, I bought the form for the governor, and every member, whether it's the National Assembly or the State Assembly, I paid for their form. Ask all of them, did any of them buy from? You know, he makes bold these things. No, and he's not supposed to be, I don't know whether there's any law that incriminates him or not, or whether it's liable for anything in that sense. But these are the building blocks to how people carry much of this influence politically, and they're able to make decisions on who succeeds them and what goes and what doesn't go. Is there a legislation? Can we use a legislation to check some of these things? Is INEC supposed to be involved one way or the other? Just an open question. So
democracy is free to allow anybody participate at any level. If he wants, as a governor wants to buy a form, it's free. This is what's critical. If the people do not participate enough, how many delegates does he have? No,
Mr. Conde, what I'm saying is that a man buys a form, funds the campaign, he wields influence over you. So you're more likely to be loyal to him than the will of the people.
Okay, what stops the average Nigerian from buying a form, coming together, a group? Okay, let's just say us sitting down here, myself, Claudia, and you, and then we say, we're going to support this person, and we buy the form. Well, in any climb in the world in democracy, once you take those steps, that's what will happen. So it's fine. He buys it. But imagine, let's say, 5,000 people in Rivers State that are in that party saying, because you use Wiki, I'm using Rivers State. 5,000 people in that party saying we are putting our money behind these guys. They have the votes. They have the number of delegates because they participate in party primaries. They will outwit a governor. But here's the conversation. As long as the governor does that and we do not participate, that's what gives him that power.
So the docility of the people is the problem
yes,
here.
That's the problem. There's no, democracy is not against law. Anybody can go behind.
So how do we awaken our people to take responsibility? I don't think that the entire number, I don't know how many politicians there are, whether they're elected officials, I don't think they're up to 30,000 or maybe 20,000 or way less than that. So you can see the microcosm, the insignificant number of people, permit my words, in terms of percentage as against the entire population. Let's even exaggerate that there are 50,000 politicians elected. I know it's not even near close. Let's even exaggerate it. And then we're about, let's give it ourselves 200 million. So you can imagine the number of people controlling our commonwealth. Let's take it back. What do we do?
First and foremost, the average Nigerian, so I'd give simple basic problems. First, we're not Nigerian enough, and we don't have Nigerian people. I would say the most marginalized tribe in Nigeria is Nigerians. And here's the conversation, because everybody is Igbo first, Yoruba, Fulani, Efik, and etc. Secondly, the holy book of being a citizen of Nigeria is the Constitution. How many Nigerians? Less than 1% of Nigerians have opened the Constitution. I didn't say no, I said opened. No is less than 0.25% that know the Constitution. And please, do not mention lawyers. No offense, they don't know anything. Back to what I was saying. So
they'll come for you.
in a manner of speaking, because this is what they studied, right? Yeah. So they know the law because they studied the law. But I think you're saying in the manner of speaking.
Yeah, I'm saying generally, the average lawyer doesn't even understand what happens in the Electoral Act. I'll give you an example. During the issues with the elections and court proceedings, I was surprised to see that nobody went to court and said that within the Electoral Act, every political party must have produced a physical and an electronic copy to INEC. And in the face that that wasn't done, it means that every convention and primaries were null and void. That was simple. It's in the Electoral Act.
No, well, that's just a few lawyers.
We have no lawyer went there, but it's that simple.
We have a lot more, but you can go with your
so let's ignore that. But let's state. So the issue is most Nigerians don't ever understand the laws, and a constitution is only as strong, or an electoral act is only as strong as the number of people that know it in that country. That's another weakness by us. So no Nigerians, no electoral act, and then we also, I don't know, we have this. I don't know whether it's African, but we have this false view of power. So I think maybe because we've lived under military rule for quite some time, I think that has bought into our thinking of how democracy works. President suspends the governor. Yeah, it's fine. President can do that. No, it's not fine. Section 305 doesn't give a president that power. But it's fine. And because of that, we do not challenge the status quo. We believe it's great for a governor to do a road. It's great for a governor to commission a borehole. Are you joking? Nobody sits down. Okay, like we mentioned, I think me and you in a conversation before, we mentioned nobody knows, there's no local government in Nigeria whose FAC allocation is less than 250 million. That's minus their IGR. Nobody cares. And the so-called executive chairman move around easily. They live within us. Nobody challenges them.
You know, the reason we're having this conversation, some will say it's too early. It's still 2 years to 2027, but that's not according to a politician's calendar. 2027 is like next week for them.
No,
so
I don't think it's next week.
It's like tomorrow,
no,
right?
2027 started the moment May 29, 2023.
So it's important to equip the people and ensure that the systems, the institutions, the structures that will ensure that we have a good leadership recruitment process is at least tinkered with such that it reflects to a large extent, what we want as a people, our yearnings as a people. Now, that's another part entirely that I don't want to go to. So is a pyramid in that sense, right? So you have the population, few of them join political parties, fewer are members of the executive of a political party, even fewer get to decide who the flag bearer of a party is. In that sense, sometimes the governor influences it. So it's almost like a pyramid. Some say this pyramid is meant to work bottom up, but what we have is top to bottom. So it's a person at the top that dictates, and then we, the electorate at the bottom, get to select or elect who they have decided in that sense. I hope you understand my sense. So how do we balance this? Because there's a bottom-up approach. There's also the top-to-bottom approach. A governor would still influence a successor, yes or no?
Yes, but...
Is that wrong?
It's not, democratically it's not wrong, but here's the conversation. Till Nigerians begin to invest in their own democracy, we'll never have a Nigeria that we're supposed to have. Nigerians have, how do I put it, thrown away their responsibility. And because we are not invested in it, we cannot demand accountability from it. So till we sit down, let's give an example. Let's say in Lagos, how many people even would say they participate in trying to ensure that the next governor will emerge? No, I can tell you the number is less than 100 that are thinking about the next governor. What's the rest of 100 minus 25 million in Lagos are doing is what are they going to bring so that we just vote? That's what you're thinking of. And as long as we continue to think that way, I don't think democracy is going to change in Nigeria.
So are you saying that we should begin to think of ensuring that people join political parties in that sense?
Yeah, I think it's more critical than anything else. What's missing in Nigeria's democracy, as long as you're not invested in a political party, we'll continue to have low numbers in participation. Last time we had 50% of our voting population participate in an election, 2015. And if you notice, because of the issues in 2015, it was quite an interesting election, we had people jump into political parties. We had people doing door-to-door, not even giving orders by the party. They were doing door-to-door. They were invested in that election. And that was just 50%. They were invested in that election. As long as we do not do that.
But how is that different from the compulsory voting bill, which has now been thrown out by the speaker, saying you people must vote, by all means, participate in this. So if you're saying people must also participate in political parties, they tell you, well, I have freedom of association. I have the freedom to choose to be a part or not. So isn't that just going to go the route of the compulsory voting bill? By the way, do you support that?
No, I never supported that. Number one, it abuses the freedom of expression, association, and movement. So
doesn't joining a political party also?
No. So what I'm saying, I'm not saying it's compulsory. What I'm saying is that once you do not join a political party, you should just know you've exercised your freedom not to ask for accountability. You've exercised your freedom not to participate in an election. You've exercised your freedom to choose a selection and not an election. That's what I'm saying. So I don't believe in any compulsory things. We're all here now. Price of rice is the same for all of us, whether you participate or not. Price of groundnut oil is the same. Dollar is hitting us back to back. So it's for me. So it's not critically a what they call a compulsion. But if we're going to repair Nigeria's democracy, if we are not involved in political parties, then we're joking.
So at the end of the day, it looks like a cul-de-sac, a catch-22 situation. Is that what you're describing here? Because your description looks like it's gloom, gloom, gloom all the way.
Yeah, we've done the same things. Has there been any change? And the funny thing is that we think, yeah, maybe 2027 will be exceptionally different or will be altered by what's going on. I don't think so. And this is why I think we're even going to have a lower voter turnout in 2027 than we had in 2023. And it's not because anybody is doing anything, let's say, wrong. It's because we're not even committed to that system of democracy. And less commitment, less participation. less involvement.
A lot to unpack, really, from this conversation. And as I said, the goal is to set the standard. What should the standard be? And then try to find a way to ensure that that standard stands. That's why it's called a standard, right? We're joined now to expand this conversation by Advocate for a New Nigeria. Is popular both on and off social media. We have Mr. Peter Aka joining us, but a lot of people know him as Randy Peters online. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, sirs. An absolute pleasure being here. Good morning, sir.
So you've been causing quite a stir, both on and offline. Online with your advocacy for electoral reforms, fixing INEC. You see, no transmission, no election. Then offline with your movement. Today you are at the National Assembly. Some other time you are at the police to get, you know, not permission, but just to inform them that this is what we're doing.
Yes,
it's almost like you're driven by something. And we were just having a conversation about, you know, the Senate president speaking to second-term governors on what to do to select their successors or to choose their successors in that sense. But you are driven by something different in that sense, the whole process. So tell us why you're driven, why now, and we'll come to the feedback that you've been getting.
Thank you very much for having me. Look, the tragedy about Nigeria is that we are living in an alternate reality. We have decided to put the cart before the horse, so everyone is struggling. The literal professor said that things have fallen apart and the center cannot hold. So what happens when the center has caved? What happens to what is supposed to get support or stamina from it? Everyone in Nigeria is struggling today because the center piece where everyone should get stability is not okay. If we fail to fix governance, we are just in a vicious circle of lamentations and complaints. Nigeria, we claim to be a democracy, and the hallmark of every democracy are free, fair, credible, and peaceful elections. Without people being able to choose their leaders, you can't call that a democracy. We can decide to call it anything else. And unfortunately for us, we have refused or failed to pay attention and fixing that system, which is the first line of accountability for public office holders. If you do not have a system where you can vote in people, and if they fail to perform, you vote them out, what is the deterrence for doing or behaving badly? When you know there is a corrupt or criminal electoral process that you can weaponize and come back. So that is what we have. We begin. Why should somebody be talking about people, a governor, bringing in a successor? Is it that the 10 million or so persons in the state do not have the ability to choose a leader? It is because our political system is structured such that we have strong men against the will of the people. So somehow, whether or not the people decide to sway this way, there is a structure that gives power to one person to be able to decide the fate of every other person. And Nigerians are not concerned about that. And if you do not do it now, at what point do we do it? You are complaining about inflation, insecurity, and whatever, the cost of living. The persons who put you in this situation are already prepared for 2027. So the question to every Nigerian is, what is then your plan for 2027? And nobody should say that the electoral process is okay. 2023 was a very clear example. We had 93 million registered voters according to INEC. 89 million collected PVCs. That is more than 90%. Less than 30 million came out to vote. Why are Nigerians not interested in that process? The professor in INEC, the INEC chairman, received 313 billion from the government and said, out of this amount, I'm taking 150-something billion for electronic technology. BVAS, which was the ultimate, supposed to be the game changer in the 2022 Electoral Act. On the day of the elections, the INEC chairman said there was a glitch. Gentlemen, does any of us here know why there was a glitch or what caused the glitch? And why should we not have further glitches going forward? If there is sincerity of purpose on the part of the politicians to actually give power to the people, why has nobody talked about fixing that process to ensure we have a seamless process? So the entire arrogance of a political class that is corrupt is a dysfunctional electoral system. And if you fail to fix it, you are only postponing the evil day, because they find a way of getting back by 2027, you have 4 more years. You complain and lament, then you get to 2031. If you fail to do nothing, how many years do Nigerians want to spend on the street complaining and lamenting? It is either now or we continue to suffer.
So at the end of the day, you've made a very profound and striking statement, all in just short time you spoke on, and it's quite important. So I'm just processing. So I'll give you a scenario. I'll give you a straight question and give us a solution. Let's assume that these politicians are not ready for change. Let's assume that they are weaponizing the system. Let's assume that this system is working for them. And anything that will fix this system, they'll come against it with everything they have.
Yes.
As a Nigerian, you are the vanguard of this, at least for now. Where should we start from?
We must start from people identifying what exactly is the importance of that process. Do Nigerians realize that the collective destinies of persons depend on our decision to hold persons accountable? Because one of the things you will notice about Nigeria is that the persons in power are emboldened by the docility of the people. How many are the persons in power? How many senators do we have? How many reps? How many persons are in the presidency? Calculate all with the 36 state governors. So the question will now be, in Nigeria, the people in power and the power of the people, who should be greater? If one person can come out to boast and say that in so-so-so state by 2027 there will be no party or there will be no opposition, or by this time nobody can stop the re-election of this person, at what point do the 200 million or more victims of bad governance come together and say, by this time we want to end bad governance?
Why do you think we're docile?
There are different reasons to it. One, there is an apathy because Nigeria throws a lot at you. So the dysfunctionality in government makes you weak and uninterested. You are battling hunger, you are battling insecurity, you are battling a lack of health infrastructure. So everybody is struggling. There is little energy to begin to put into what you believe cannot be changed. So when you talk about having free and fair elections in Nigeria or good governance, some persons are completely detached from that reality. It will not work. They even tell you, Peter, forget about this thing. And then again, there is the benefit of hindsight for NSAS. One of the only times Nigerian youths came out to agitate for the end of brutality, they were met with even more brutality. So by the time you step out to say, I want to do this, your mother, somebody is calling you, please, it's not your blood that Nigeria will be built on. Can you come back home? So there are many reasons, but my point is this. What is our other option? If we decide not to be interested, people are died. More than 150 persons are killed in Plateau. A flood has killed more than 200 in Niger. If you speak, we are going to die. So at what point do we now decide to sum up the courage and say, let's fix this?
It's a lot to unravel. I mean, the Niger situation, we had the State Emergency Management Authority saying so far they've recorded 153, but they fear that the death toll will increase, particularly when they go to the river Niger. But gentlemen, I want to lay this before you because this conversation is important. It's meant to reawaken something in Nigerians. Make no mistake about it. There's still millions of Nigerians and even more that are in support of those in power.
Yes.
And you see them from time to time. They come out campaign, be it door to door, they buy t-shirts, face caps, they're all out there, right? So is it docility or just freedom of choice? So some choose to support the system as it is right now for a number of reasons. It works for them in that sense. Maybe they have someone close to them who is benefiting from it, so naturally it's my family, great. Or they just feel this works. At least some of them have not been to other climes, or some just think this is the best we can have. So they decide to pitch their tent with the current system. For some other people like you are like, no, it must work. So how do we find what I call it a level playing field to be able to cross-pollinate and say, well, this is what we want. You have your freedom to choose, support it or not, but this is at least the barest minimum that we should have when it comes to structure or the institution that ensures that we choose the right leaders. I'll come to you then, come to the kind of feedback you've been getting.
Okay, so first and foremost, here's the problem. You can't engage a system you don't understand, which is why the work we do is very important, which is political education. You can't engage a system. So I'll tell you how Nigeria is rigged. It's rigged in multiple ways. Number one, Nigeria says, within the Electoral Act, when you're running for president, you cannot spend more than 10 billion.
On paper.
You cannot, when you're running for governor, you cannot spend more than 1 billion. When you're running for Senate, you cannot spend more than 100 million.
That's
when
on
you're
paper.
running for, no, it's on paper. But here's where they rigged it. They put this law so you cannot say there's no, how do I put it? There's no
spending limits.
Spending limits. Now, the trick the National Assembly put to rig everything was nobody starts with the responsibility of monitoring campaign limits, campaign fund limits. So when you carry a case that this person spent so amount in his election, they will tell you no one has jurisdiction. End. Court case. Finito. Simple. The campaign limit for local government chairman is 25 million. We have political parties selling the form for local government chairman at 10 million. What are you going to spend on campaigns? It's gone. So, no, and here's the problem. Nigerians do not understand. Like I say, you can't engage a system you don't understand. He said something when I was talking, electronic transmission. Yes, everybody had a problem with that. But if you go into the Electoral Act, INEC has the power to choose what mode of transmission. Yeah. That is already rigging the election before it happens. Yeah. So, you see, these little minor lines in our laws, so for you to fight the system, you have to go back to understand why it is the way it is, and then get it corrected, then come back to fighting the system. Because as long as that system exists, you now have 3 modes of primaries. Indirect and direct were fine before. Delegates, you now have consensus, meaning 6 of us, and I was in the political party, so 6 of us, national. And
they served you breakfast, right?
No. I thought it was hectic. When I entered the civic space, I even found out how it was. But let's not discuss that. But I was at the highest level, and I understand what consensus primaries means. We don't understand it. We think it's a better freedom. No, it means that 4 of us here who have political positions can choose and say, you know what, this guy is going for governor.
Because he has knelt down, he has rolled on the floor, because he's subservient.
Yes, that's what consensus means. And, you know, here's the joke. Political parties conduct multiple primaries. I was in a political party and I was at the highest level. INEC only responds to the invitation of the national secretary. So please, how are you at 6 different primaries, then you throw it to the courts to choose? INEC itself is a problem. I don't think it's a problem. It's the problem.
It's a weapon.
So I know how the system is supposed to work. National Secretary, who is the chief administrator of a political party, sends a letter. INEC attends that primaries. How do you have 6 primaries? Like, look at the Edo State situation with APC before the present governor was elected. There were more than 5 primaries. Are you joking? How is that even happening? And you know, this multiple situations. So what I think the Nigerian electorate has not understood is that we must learn to think like these guys. That's the truth. You cannot say you're going to run against these guys that already know how the system works, and then you want to play an Obama mode. Are you serious? These guys are not Obama playing.
So Peters, yes. I'm sure you're going to respond to some of the things that Kyrie raised and respond to him as well. So let me just break it down. You have spoken about coordinated chaos. He has talked about legislative flip-flops. Those are the alibi these politicians hide under to deal with the citizens the way they are being dealt with. I always like to start with a question of where are we starting from? You have started somewhere. How do we get the critical mass to be able to make this happen as soon as possible?
As soon as possible. Thank you very much. To Mr. Kerde's question, you were talking about how do we get a balance. The question will be if there is sincerity of purpose in the phrase electoral reform or fixing INEC. Is there anything that should be partisan in it? Is there anything that is ambiguous? Should everybody, regardless of partisan support, not be interested in a credible process? So if you leave it not to be reformed, are you saying that not reforming it benefits a certain faction? So leave it crude so that those people benefit, or let's refine it and give a level playing ground. I think anybody who is honest should be able to say we should reform it. Not by President Buhari telling you that if you reject the result of this, you should go to court, because there is a judicial aspect of it. Nigerians, you know, said there was electoral reform in 2022. There was a lot of persons do not pay attention. Section 60, subsection 65 of that electoral act says the presiding officer will transmit the result in a way and manner that is prescribed by INEC. And same thing in paragraph 38 of the INEC guidelines. So even when INEC decided a way to handle the elections, the judiciary did not hold them to it because there are no consequences spelled out in the Electoral Act. And right now in the National Assembly, there is an amendment that is going on between INEC and the National Assembly, with INEC having 5-point agenda, none specifying there should be mandatory transmission of results electronically. So in all of it, you will see that there is an issue. And the mere fact that since 2023 till date, nobody in the helms of power have thought it right that we should fix this system, and there must be a timeline. At most by December this year, we should conclude anything about election, because it must be 1 year out of the other election. That is why you see us screaming. So now, coming to your question, Nigerians will realize that the clock is ticking on every one of us. When you see me, what I am doing is to ensure that I do not wake up a day after 2027 and realize there is something I should have done that I did not do. You cannot change everything, but you can begin somewhere. If you get a foundation from where you can begin your nation building, it is easier for you. Because when you come, people will tell you, oh, there is hunger, there is this, there is... So, during End Bad Governance, you saw it. After the protest, what happened? These prices of things even skyrocketed.
I asked about the feedback you've been getting, because it's important to track it.
Yes.
Because you've set a target December.
Yes.
December is 6 months
from now
away. And
that's when my mood will leave off.
Exactly. So, and you know how fast things can move. And tell you, oh, well, it's not possible again. Let's move on to 2031 and just work for it. So what kind of feedback have you been getting? A lot of people know you as a content creator. They missed your content, funny content. Now they see you talking about fixing Nigeria. Some ask, how did Peter just switch? Is he being funded by somebody? Is somebody empowering him, as they said, who is bankrolling you in that sense? But speak to us about the feedback. You guys remember bankrolling? Speak to us about the feedback you've been getting. Is this mission impossible? Does it look like mission impossible, or this mission is possible for you? And those questions around the backing you're getting.
Do you know why I don't place it on a scale of mission impossible or mission not possible? It is mission that must be done. It is either Nigerians do it now or they do it later. The only thing is postponing the evil day, as it is. When it comes to bankrolling, in fact, moving to Abuja, I live in Lagos and I've been going to Abuja. It is my house rent that I was supposed to use to renew, that I have been using. Nobody, because Nigerians, even when you come out to say, oh, we want to do this, because of the space of, you know, civic engagement, people begin to feel like maybe this person is out for some financial benefits and all of that. There is nobody. We are just trying to see. We came together with a group of persons, Nigeria Electoral Reform Coalition, NACO. We are personally doing whatever we are doing. The conference we held in Abuja, we invited people like Barrister Femi Falana. There was almost no refreshment to give anybody there. But the feedback is that a lot of Nigerians do not actually believe in that process, that we can have free and fair elections. That is how bad it is. A lot of Nigerians have given up that when it comes to credible elections, they will not do anything. Some people will tell you the statement, is it these people who are benefiting from it that you expect to reform it? Then the question is...
And it's a valid question.
It's a valid question, and this is the valid answer. If you cannot get the reform from them, maybe you should wait for them to exhaust 8 years, and maybe the persons they bring will be easier to get it from. It will never get better. It is either you mount the pressure now and get it, or we continue to suffer.
And it's good to see that you've gotten attention from a lot of people from the National Assembly and others. So wish you the very best. I must commend the work you're doing. Hopefully, we've been able to ignite or trigger something in Nigerians to get more interested and involved in the process. Peter Aka, advocate for a new Nigeria. At Randy Peters online.
That's in the back burner right now.
Oh, definitely.
This is big for him.
Absolutely. And we wish you're able to raise your rent. Right? After you spend I'm Kunle Lawal, the Executive Director, Electoral College. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
Well, it's a collective work. We need to fix the system, and we have to do it together. We'll take a moment now. When we return, we're still reviewing President Bola Tinubu's 2 years of renewed hope. What is it for you? Find out in a moment. Stay with us.